This is TWiT.
One thing you don't got to wait for if you don't want to, and that's podcasts coming to YouTube Music. As we know, we've talked about it many times, Google's podcast strategy.
I have lots of thoughts on this, but get through the news.
A little bit of a mess the past few years, how Google has approached podcasts. The new hotness for Google right now, of course, is podcasts within YouTube Music. After a February announcement and a March testing period, podcasts are now rolling out to the YouTube Music app to users in the US. So basically, and you don't have to be a premium subscriber, by the way. So basically, you can use YouTube Music as your podcast app. Kind of, sort of. I don't know. I still found it kind of confusing. I mean, I could search and everything, but it's like, wait a minute, am I looking at podcasts on YouTube or am I looking at just like podcast feeds? I still don't know.
You're not. So here's the issue, and I'll dig into exactly what's going on here because obviously this is something near
apart.
My heart. But basically, so what's happening in terms of podcasts on YouTube is that YouTube has enabled you to identify a playlist as a podcast. And what that means then is that podcast will not only be included in their podcast section on YouTube on the desktop, but when looked on the YouTube Music app in the podcast section, it looks a heck of a lot like Spotify and Pocket Casts, and you can upload your one-by-one, cover art for your podcast and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they still have not rolled out RSS feed ingestion. They have not rolled out RSS feed sync. All this is that if you have a podcast and you are creating a video file of your podcast, either with people behind microphones like we do, and here's the video version of our podcast.
Yeah.
Or if you just take the audio of your audio podcast and drop it into a video with a static graphic and export that and upload that to YouTube, if you put that on a playlist that's flagged as a podcast, it shows up in the podcast section of YouTube Music.
Okay.
So it is fascinating and mind-numbing as a podcaster since 2015 to see YouTube Music and YouTube to be perverting or twisting what the term podcast is. And admittedly, I know I said we were talking earlier in the pre-show about a dated opinion, but like to me, podcasts are media delivered via RSS.
Yeah, I would agree.
Right? And there's no RSS happening on YouTube Music.
Yeah.
It's just not yet. Now I'm fortunate enough to through at my day job and just through my job and everything in particular to have relationships with people at YouTube. I've sat in on product briefings with the product manager behind podcasts on YouTube. They claim they're going to allow podcasters to submit their RSS feed and adjust that way. I've also heard rumblings of if you don't do video, they'll make it so that you can ingest your audio and create a video that can work in that way. But like at the end of the day, YouTube and YouTube Music is a video platform. It's video, and it's the same like the commingling and the mixing when they got rid of Google Play Music and music to YouTube Music. Remember, Jason, our biggest concern was, can I just find the audio of the album I want to listen to? Am I going to have to watch a music video? And even though the audio files are there, YouTube Music is priority to video. Priority to music videos. When I go to my annoying Nest Hub, who by the way is still getting worse. I almost took a video the other day of the laughable search results I was getting. Now it's at the point where it's not even playing songs on YouTube Music. It's giving me search results, even though I'm saying play this song on YouTube Music. It's like, how about these search results? It's like, come on. But anyway, so while this is making podcasts available on the app to everyone in the US, it's not podcasts. Sorry, it's not. But it is. So
yeah, well, it's kind of like Google's playing a bit of a semantics game, because like when I went on there, of course I did a search for All About Android, and I found All About Android, and I could add it to my library. So it's not subscribing, it's add to your library. So I'm like, okay, so am I subscribing it, or am I like downloading this for offline viewing, or what does that even mean? And then when I hit play, it shows me the video version. Like there was no clarity on, am I watching the actual podcast from the feed, which it sounds like from what you're saying, I'm not. I'm only watching All About Android as a podcast as it's found on YouTube, because we also upload our videos to YouTube for people to, find, because we have a video product and that's another place to do it. So it's like, so they're playing the semantics game because All About Android is a podcast.
So it's this weird gaslighting thing, because you're absolutely right, because there's no subscribe feature. There's no notification to a new episode. You're adding the podcast to your library, but that just means that the whole archive is available in your library. And when you search for it, it shows up. There's no push mechanism for a new episode. It's completely, it's just taking the term podcast and slapping it into the thing to say that they're competitive with Spotify, which is frustrating.
It's playlists. I mean, it's
playlists.
YouTube playlists. That's I don't think necessarily that it's being like get off my lawn to say that there is a publish push. It's a stream. It's a published stream of information. Like it's just like any other kind of show, like a periodic show. If I make a play, I don't need a podcast feature to make playlists for me. That's not the point. Right. And that presumably is missing a whole bunch of actually self-identifying. Right now, the only podcast function that you're referring to that it offers up is the 1x1 album art of the podcast. It does show you that as opposed to a 16:9 thumbnail of the latest video. Sorry, woo. Sorry.
Right.
Just that yes, that's
so talk about what we're looking forward to at I/O. I would really like to hear from the product folks at YouTube Music to understand what the podcast rollout to YouTube looks like, a podcast, and because it baffles me, because I've sat in these meetings and I've sat in these product briefings where they tell, for a couple of years now, YouTube's been telling us, listen, we have user data that people are using YouTube to listen to audio. Period. So that means we're going to support podcasts. And what the distinction of what they're not realizing is that, yes, people are using YouTube to listen to audio, because I know a lot of coworkers and staff of mine will go to YouTube and put on an 8-hour lo-fi stream, right? Or like background. I know somebody who puts background music of a coffee shop. And that's what they work to. And so they pretend they're at a coffee shop, right? There are people who listen to 6-hour ASMR stuff and stuff like that. So yes, they're using audio. Those are not podcasts. Right. So it's like there's a weird reality distortion field happening within the YouTube product organization around audio and around podcasts. And it does, as a podcaster, it does feel like I'm being gaslit.
Well,
right?
Yeah,
it's
like YouTube looked at its platform and said, oh, wow, a lot of podcasters are putting their podcasts on YouTube. We should have a way for people to find those podcasts on YouTube. But then when you put it into a category of podcasts, like, I think from a user perspective, and maybe it's just from like an us perspective, because we're so steeped in podcasting, because that's like part of our jobs. But from my perspective, like, I don't get what I'm going there to get. I get, oh, you're exactly right. I get a playlist of the available podcasts that have been uploaded to YouTube, not podcasts, which is an RSS. And as Burke pointed out in Slack, RSS is the playlist. Right. When it comes to podcasts. Yeah. But that's not the playlist you get there. You get the playlist of the podcasts that someone chose to upload to YouTube and then tag or mark as a podcast. It's subtle. I think the difference is probably subtle to some people listening, but I feel like it's an important distinction.
No, it's baffling. It's like somebody who read an article in USA Today about podcasts, then set up the product in YouTube Music for podcasts, right? Like it's without a fundamental understanding of what make podcasts what they are and how they work and what this entire ecosystem is. And like, to be honest, like, don't get me wrong, now I'm soapboxing, but I'm sorry, but the arc of the podcast industry and how the rise and fall, and right now we're in like ad revenues in free fall and all this sort of stuff, and the industry's crashing and all this nonsense. But like, the fact of the matter is that there are millions and millions and millions of podcasts out there. And many of them don't stick. Many of the people who try it, hobbyists or whatever. But then there are people like us who like, Jesus Christ. It's 2023. I've been doing this for nearly, Jason, we've been doing this for nearly 20 years. Like Leo, like everybody's been doing this for such a long time. And the thing about it is that not every, like, I know so many independent podcasters who have been doing it for a long time, have a great setup, and are committed to audio and don't have the money, the resources, or the desire to embrace video in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. Right. And if you go to youtube.com/podcasts on the website, in their podcast section, it's all Joe Rogan. it's either Joe Rogan or it's other people with setups like that, or it's IGN or whomever, or like, stuff like that. Like, honestly, like TWiT fits in what YouTube's vision for podcasts are, because there is a commitment to video, which I do respect, and like, and should be there, but like, it shouldn't preclude or shouldn't exclude the millions of independent podcasters who have built a ecosystem around audio and embraced audio and love audio for what it is. They're people, like, there's a reason why I choose to listen to my podcasts and not watch them, right? And now the reality of it, and now I'm soapboxing even more, but the reality of it always comes back to dollars, and always comes back to ad revenue, and always comes back to that sort of thing. And once the IAB and all the ad networks and other, the radio media, stuff like that, got their mitts into podcasting, everything has slowly degraded what was so pure and wonderful about podcasting, because it became about, how do you monetize it? Well, video monetizes better than audio, so you should do a video version. Like, and it became a slippery slope to the point where we're at now, where YouTube Music is rolling out podcasts, and there's not an RSS feed or an audio file to be found anywhere.
Mm-hmm. But
because a video ad unit is worth more than an audio ad unit. That's why.
And as Lee Woods in the Discord says, my kiddos digest everything on YouTube. If you want to reach their generation, it has to be on YouTube. And YouTube knows this, of course, and they know that they have the podcast. Yeah, it's really kind of a complicated, confusing thing. It's like, to that degree, then I sort of understand where YouTube is coming from. Well, we've got all these podcasts on here. Why not make it easy for people to find the podcasts that are here? It's just, there's something about it, like you said, gaslit. There's something about it that feels, wrong in how it's being presented, because it's not the same thing that Spotify is doing. No, it's not
here's the thing,
just an archive of all podcasts, and anyone can upload.
And YouTube's going to tell us that they're going to make it that we can import our RSS feeds. Like, they have the engineering capability to have done that from the get-go. Everyone would have flocked to it. This is Google Podcasts all over again. It's an innate misunderstanding of what the business is, and fumbling of it, and how to favor the creators and favor the community that already exists. And what they're doing is they're again doing it to support ad revenue, right? Because it's not going to be, oh, hey, load your RSS feed and you can have your podcast on YouTube. It's going to be, no, load your RSS feed and we'll allow you to make a video from your audio so it could be on YouTube Music. That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, right.
Advertising, which is their business model, which is their prerogative. But it's like, don't tout and don't celebrate that podcasts are available on YouTube Music, because they're not. It's not podcasts. I'm sorry, YouTube. It's not. So,
case closed.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize we would go down this whole thing, but this is my new messaging.
Right. And now for the next 5 months, instead of two-factor authentication and end-to-end encryption, we'll be back on podcasting for the next 5 months.
Yep. It's just silly.
Here we are again.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Pruitt, and I am the host of Hands-On Photography here on TWiT TV. I know you got yourself a fancy smartphone, you got yourself a fancy camera, but your pictures are still lacking. Can't quite figure out what the heck shutter speed means? Watch my show. I got you covered. Want to know more about just the ISO and exposure triangle in general? Yeah, I got you covered. Or if you got all of that down, you want to get into lighting, making things look better by changing the lights around you. I got you covered on that too. So check us out each and every Thursday here on the network. Go to twit.tv/hop and subscribe today.